Hi, friend. Kim Vopni, aka the Vagina Coach, talks to us today about pelvic floor health. Who hasn't had that embarrassing moment when you've sneezed, coughed, or laughed and leaked a little urine? The bad news is that left unchecked, it gets worse over time. The good news is that Kim is going to give us specific steps to fix these issues. And at the end of the conversation, she addresses the issue of painful sex and tells us what we can do about that. This is a conversation that you might want to share with your daughter or your mother if you're lucky enough to have those people in your life, because she covers all phases of life. And you can watch this podcast on YouTube or Spotify. And please follow or subscribe so you don't miss an episode. And thank you for listening. I hope that you can feel the love and appreciation that I have for you. I truly and deeply mean that. Thank you. Hi, friends. I'm Lauren Bernick, and I'm flipping the script about growing older. My guests have been influencers since before that was even a thing. Welcome to the Anti-Aging Podcast. Welcome to Age Like a Badass Mother. Kim Vopni is a certified fitness professional and menopause support practitioner known as the Vagina Coach. She became passionate about spreading information on pelvic health after the birth of her first child over 20 years ago. Kim is a sought-after speaker, a women's health educator, and the author of 3 books. She began her work with the prenatal and postpartum population, where she founded her own business and co-founded a second company called Bellies Inc. She now works primarily with women in the perimenopause and postmenopause phases of life. Doctors and physical therapists are always referring their clients to her Buff Muff method as the go-to pelvic health resource that allows women from around the world to find support through workouts, challenges, and group coaching. Kim also certifies other fitness and movement professionals to work with women with core and pelvic floor challenges through her Buff Muff Method Practitioner certification. You can find her online through her podcast Between Two Lips, her website at vaginacoach.com, and on social media at Vagina Coach. Please welcome the Vagina Coach, Kim Vopni.
Thank you so much. I appreciate your intro.
Oh, thank you. So I just want to start by kind of getting you to give us your background a little bit. I mean, did you want to be a vagina coach when you were growing up?
No, not at all. No, I wanted to be a dolphin trainer, actually. That was my,
right?
That was my dream.
I mean, what little kid? Yeah, I think that's common.
Yeah.
Okay. So how'd you get from dolphin coach to vagina coach?
Well, it was a fear of childbirth, really. So I grew up thinking I was never going to have babies. And then when I did decide I wanted to start a family, I was determined to have a different story than my mom. So my mom was an OR nurse. She was very open with my brother and I with anatomy, and she always allowed questions. And when I would ask her, why does your back hurt? Why aren't you running anymore? Why, it was always childbirth and I leak urine. And so she had surgery for incontinence. She had a hysterectomy. She had chronic back pain, and she associated it and tied it into childbirth. And so I grew up thinking, well, I don't want to do any of that. And that was that. So then when I was pregnant, decided I did want to go down that path. I was determined to have a different story than my mom's. My midwives had recommended a product to me called the Epino, which is a biofeedback device to help facilitate sensations of birth and help people understand how to connect with their pelvic floor prior to birthing their babe. And so this made sense to me. Being a personal trainer, stretching and strengthening in preparation for a physical event was logical to me and what I was already doing. And so I used this. I had a great experience. And then I thought, well, why doesn't everybody know about this? And maybe I should help spread the word. And I contacted the company and said, could I be a distributor in Canada? And they said, sure. And I didn't intend for it to be a business. I thought I'll just sell it on the side to friends and through my midwives. And anyway, now it's 21 years later, and that's how it started. So initially it was working with pregnant women. I created a program called Prepare to Push, and I wanted to help educate women on the pelvic floor prior to actually giving birth, knowing that that was one of the major contributors to pelvic floor dysfunction. And then afterwards, I started to notice that, okay, I'm helping them prepare, but now we're completely overlooking this postpartum recovery phase. And in North America, we have to look not pregnant as fast as possible and get back to the gym right away. And looking at what other cultures are doing, and they honor that recovery they covet that first 40 days is a very common time frame. So that's where Bellies Inc. came in. We wanted to optimize postpartum recovery and use pelvic floor and restorative exercise plus wrapping, belly wrapping and pelvis wrapping afterwards as a way to help the tissues heal. Then I started to go through my own perimenopause journey, not knowing what perimenopause was. And now postmenopause. And this was a whole other phase of life where other challenges show up with the pelvic floor, some exacerbated of things that have already happening or some are new. And so I had this, recognition that the pelvic floor is not something we only pay attention to when we're pregnant or only postpartum. This is something that we really need to understand how, as we evolve through our different phases, how we can help optimize the health of our pelvic floor as well. And initially, I was working with pregnant women and new moms. I was the fitness doula. And then when I started working more with this menopause population, doula didn't resonate as much. I knew I needed a bit of a brand shift. And so when I was speaking to a group of women at an entrepreneur conference, I came up on stage as a presenter. All the other presenters were like a finance coach, marketing coach, strategy coach. And I joked, now you have a vagina coach. And that joke then became the brand shift that I needed. That was about 8 years ago. So no, wasn't my lifelong dream to become a vagina coach. It all kind of like happened accidentally on purpose.
It just sounds like it really was kind of meant to be. But okay, I have two questions. What is belly wrapping? Quickly, what is that?
Sorry, what's your second question?
Well, I was going to ask about the changes that happened to your pelvic floor during perimenopause and postmenopause. Sure.
So belly wrapping is, many cultures in the world will use, they sometimes will call it belly binding. And it's like, for instance, in Southeast Asia, I lived in Southeast Asia when I was in high school, and they have something called bengkong wrapping, which is layers of usually cotton cloth, and they will tie multiple layers, usually from just under the rib cage to down below the pelvis, with the intention of quote unquote closing the body. So in pregnancy and birth, there's a lot of adaptation to make room for babe, to prepare the body for birth. We need to allow the pelvic floor to relax and open to birth our baby. So there's the thought of our body has opened. It is now prone to, in Chinese medicine, they talk about being prone to wind or cold. And we need to then close the body and keep the body warm. There's a practice called mother warming to prevent cold from coming into this body that has opened to allow birth. And wrapping is a way, like the other kind of, I don't want to say I like woo-woo. I use the term lovingly, and I'm a total woo-woo person, but less sort of spiritual and more biomechanical. We look at within the pelvis, we have a certain alignment of our bones that create what's called form closure. Then we have the muscles that surround our pelvis, including our abdomen, that provide force closure. So the way that the muscles work, they help provide stability by contracting and relaxing. The alignment of the bones also provide stability inherently of how they are aligned. Those are both disrupted from pregnancy and childbirth, that form and force closure. The pelvis widens, the joints become more lax, the muscle bellies have stretched. So our ability to manage load and create stability after we've given birth, even if we've had the most perfect birth in the world, is hindered. And by helping close that, the form and force closure, when we use wrapping, it helps with that while we rebuild our internal support with exercise. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And I'm just kind of thinking about all these other cultures that really honor the new mother, like you said, with all these, just things that they do for the new mother, like the belly wrapping, and then
it's like ceremony and tradition. Yes, and we are very much missing that. Yeah.
We don't do that.
We don't have a village.
No, I was like vacuuming with a new baby in my arms, like days after. I remember, it's just so sad. I feel like we're just so missing out. And then, your experience with what changed with your.
Yeah. So for me, I had, even before perimenopause, I after the birth of my second baby, I did deal with stress urinary incontinence. And then a little while, I would say closer to kind of the start of my perimenopause journey, I developed a stage 2 uterine prolapse and a stage 2 rectocele, which is a type of organ prolapse. And so again, kind of highlighting that it isn't just about doing some Kegels or using the Epino product in your pregnancy and preventing tearing. I didn't have any tearing. So I was like, okay, I'm good. It then became, well, hold on a minute. I didn't tear. So why am I still dealing with incontinence, or why do I have prolapse? And it's so multifaceted. So again, it was an expansion of awareness for me that this isn't just about a couple Kegel exercises or here, use this product while you're pregnant. And so, and then as I was going through perimenopause, I also started to struggle with constipation for the first time in my life. And I had not changed anything. So I was like, well, I still exercise, I still drink water, still eat healthfully. Why am I all of a sudden constipated? And with the hormonal upheaval, and also I was dealing with a thyroid condition that I didn't know about, I all of a sudden had constipation, which was now exacerbating these prolapse symptoms that I was dealing with. So I didn't get to the point of having the classic vaginal dryness that a lot of people will experience, but just recognizing and starting to work with this population more than the pre-postnatal, I was starting to learn more about how people have ignored their incontinence, didn't even know they had prolapse, but now that they reach this and maybe struggle with hormones, or maybe they struggle with constipation, are now dealing with the symptoms showing up for the first time, or symptoms that are worsening in that low estrogen state associated with menopause.
And just so everybody knows, I bought Kim's course because I wanted to familiarize myself with it. And of course, I've had 3 kids, and I have, I don't have a super bad situation, but for sure, when I sneeze, sometimes I pee on myself, or um, absolutely, if I'm throwing up, I am full on peeing on myself because, you're just like bearing down, and, just like occasional things. But I'm smart enough to know that this is not going to get better with time. This is only going to get worse. And I'm the kind of person who likes to, get ahead of it and take control. And so I started doing your course, and it's very good. First of all, I love everything about it. I love the name. I love the buff muff method. I mean, that's so good, but you really explain things very well. And I think everybody's sort of familiar with their pelvic floor, but before we get like too into it, could you maybe go into that? Like, even today I'm more conscious about how I'm sitting because I want to sit on my perineum, and I learned that from you. And so I'm like, okay, and my sits bone. So like, let me make sure I'm sitting on all the stuff down here. So can you kind of get into that a little bit?
Yeah. Oh, I love that you've learned something. I love that you're putting it into action, and little things like that we have no idea that they can influence the function of our pelvic floor. And I would say it's starting to be talked about, but still people, they haven't heard the term pelvic floor. They don't know what the pelvic floor is. Is that my vagina? Is it my vulva? Sometimes they don't even know that the vulva and vagina are different things. And so I do think that there is a lack of awareness or education. There definitely is a lack of education about what the pelvic floor is. So if you right now, wherever you are sitting or standing, if you put your hands on your hips, like as if you're very cross, the tops of the pelvis, those are your pelvic bones. Right. And now put your fingers down at the front of, people will say the pubic bone. It's actually a joint there. So that's one attachment point for your pelvic floor muscles. Now, if you lift up one butt cheek and pull the flesh away, and you'll feel the bone dig around, you'll feel a bony point. If you would find one on either side, that's an attachment point for your pelvic floor. Same thing on the other side. And then at the base of our spine, we have a triangular bone called the sacrum. And at the very end of the sacrum, we have our tailbone, or our coccyx, and that's also an attachment point of the pelvic floor. So the pubic joint, the tailbone, the 2 sit bones make sort of like a diamond shape that closes off the outlet or the opening of the pelvis. So it's the floor of our pelvis. It's multiple layers. It's not just one muscle. It's 3 different layers. The first layer primarily responsible for sexual response. Second layer primarily responsible for managing our continence, the openings of the urethra, the vagina, the anus. Third layer primarily responsible for supporting our internal organs, the bladder, the uterus, rectum. The pelvic floor also, because of its attachment points on the spine and the pelvis, play a role in our pelvic and spinal control and stability. So it's the foundation of our core. We've all heard of core exercise. And it also works in synergy with our diaphragm. So every time we're breathing in, there should be a reciprocal response in the pelvic floor where it lengthens and expands. And every time we exhale, it contracts and lifts. And that synergy between the diaphragm and pelvic floor create blood flow, circulation, movement of lymph through the body, and it helps with digestion. But things that we do in life, things that happen to us in life, can interfere or disrupt function, that synergy. It could influence the attachment points for the pelvic floor muscles. We may have scar tissue from childbirths. We may have tight muscles from fear, trauma, posture. We may struggle with constipation. That could be damaging to the pelvic floor, or it could be a result of a tight pelvic floor. So we're going to go into more of all that, but it's a group of muscles, highly vascular, ligaments, nerves, tendons, all the things, but it's something we don't see. It's on the inside. We can go to the mirror in the gym and we can see that we are flexing our biceps, or we could see our calves or our quadriceps. We can't see our pelvic floor. We only see our external genitalia. So connecting with this group of muscles sometimes requires different positioning, different cueing, different visualization, biofeedback, maybe, for people to understand the movement and the synergy that this group of muscles has with our breath.
Yeah, it's so interesting when you're saying the pubic bone is not really a bone, it's a joint.
Mm-hmm.
That just like made me think, oh, that explains every time before I knew I was pregnant, that started aching, like
Mm-hmm.
throbbing.
Mm-hmm.
And that was one after the first time I was like, oh, I remember this feeling. I wonder if I'm pregnant again. That was my first clue.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's interesting that you said it. I never realized that was a joint, but it makes
Mm-hmm.
sense.
Mm-hmm.
And so you've mentioned prolapse a couple of times. I mean, I guess most people know what prolapse is. It feels like it's falling out. Is that, or am I, can
Most
you
people
talk?
don't know what prolapse
Okay.
is.
Maybe I don't even know what it is. I think
Yeah.
I do, but can you talk about that a little? What's
Yeah.
prolapse?
Pelvic organ prolapse is where the bladder, the uterus, and or the rectum, sometimes the intestines, can shift out of their proper anatomical position and bulge into or descend into the vagina. So in the case of, I can use my sweater. Pretend this is the tube of your vagina. For those of you that can't see, just
Yeah.
visualize a tube as your vagina.
And you guys can watch on YouTube and Spotify.
Yeah.
FYI.
At the top of the tube, you would have your cervix and your uterus. The front wall of the vagina, you would have your bladder on the obviously not in the vagina ideally, but here we on the front side, and on the back we would have our rectum. Okay. So we have those organs kind of nestled in there. The tube of the vagina, we also have the urethra, and we have an anus. So we have those three openings down below. And organ prolapse occurs where that, for instance, the bladder will bulge into the front wall of the vagina. The uterus can descend from the top down. The rectum can bulge into the back wall of the vagina. So a bladder prolapse can be called bladder prolapse, anterior wall prolapse, cystocele. A uterine prolapse is typically a uterine or a womb prolapse. The rectum is called a rectocele or a posterior wall prolapse. A rectal prolapse is where the rectum can bulge out the anus, and that's something that can happen in both male and female anatomy. And 50% of women who've given birth will have some degree of prolapse. Early stage prolapse is often asymptomatic. So screening with a pelvic floor physical therapist once a year, which is my absolute top recommendation always, is a way that we can be informed and catch things earlier before they become an issue, knowing that it is so common. If we can catch it earlier, we can be in a position of definitely preventing it from getting worse, improving it, and potentially even reversing it.
Okay. And so I've heard you mention this a few times, a pelvic floor therapist. I didn't even know there was such a thing. And so you're very pro pelvic floor therapist.
1,000%. Yeah.
Okay.
So I am not a pelvic floor physical therapist. I'm a personal trainer. A pelvic floor physical therapist is a physical therapist who has taken additional training in the pelvic floor and they are licensed to evaluate and treat beyond the opening of the vagina and the anus. And that happens with gloved fingers, and a rectal evaluation is not always part of the evaluation, depending on what the person is dealing with. But they are trained just like a regular physical therapist. They look at orthopedics, they look at your posture, they look at how you're moving, they look at your joints, mobility, all of that. Then they also look and can help understand the internal musculature, and if that is playing a role in your hip pain, your back pain, your knee pain, your continence, your ability to support your organs. And I truly think they are the most valuable. They are definitely the most misused or underused women's health resource that we have. As you say, you've never heard of it.
Yeah.
To me, it's essential. And I really, truly think it would change the world. It would save the government billions of dollars if we knew about this and we were told about it earlier in life and we went as part of our annual health check.
Yeah. You're in Canada, right?
Yes.
Yeah. We have quite the healthcare system here where, it's hard because you have to pay for every little thing. And I don't know how it is with you guys, but that's certainly not going to be included, in any kind of insurance.
And it's not included
probably.
here
It's
either.
not.
And our free healthcare that everybody thinks is so great, we have to wait multiple years to even get a consultation for a therapy. Yeah. Like I have a completely torn ligament in my foot that will require surgical repair. It is coming up on 2 years for me, even just to have a consult with a surgeon, because it's free.
Right. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's always something. Okay. So, but it's, if it's something you can do for yourself, sounds like that you should. And, one of the things that I thought was really interesting, in your program, like you give so much advice before you even start. Like I haven't even started on any exercises yet because there's so much prep work, which I think is really good. It's very thorough. But you said something that there's a big connection between incontinence and hip fractures. And I found that to be fascinating, like balance and all those things. So that if you're having, that's again one of the reasons that I was like, I definitely have my moments. And like I wore a pair of hot pink satin pants to a party, and I was like, okay, what if, I don't usually think about like, oh, I should put a pad in or something, but I was like, well, hell, if I get a good sneeze at this party and I'm wearing these satin pants, I mean, I'm going to think about that. So it's not enough where it's disrupting my life, but I think that everybody kind of needs to get a handle on this, whether, you're just because you're postmenopausal or you've had some kids, just know that it's probably not going to get better. But what is this correlation between hip fractures or balance with incontinence?
A couple things I want to say, and it will lead me to answering that question.
Okay, for sure.
Don't wait for it to be, like you say, it's not really bothersome. It's not disrupting my life. It kind of is, and it will not get better. And why wait to the point where it's so bad? Absolutely. So take action now. And the other thing is, when we were talking about cost, it's a cost, and that is a barrier for some, but many people are spending hundreds of dollars per month on incontinence pads, right? And so
that's a good point. I'm sure
people can spend upwards. I've done the pad math. If they're starting leaking around 30-ish, they live to their 80s, 90s, let's say, that can be upwards of $70,000 to $80,000 that they spend on incontinence pads. One physical therapy appointment in person is typically around $150, $175, maybe $200. I'm not saying that's not expensive, but things like new moms, put it on, rather than getting a million sleepers for your baby, ask for a pelvic floor physical therapy appointment for your birthday, right? Like ask for
that's a good idea
that can help your health rather than more things. Now getting to the point of taking action, and even if you've paid just for that one session to understand the status of your pelvic floor and then be responsible going forward, can make a big difference. Because Incontinence is the link there is not so much that if you're, well, there's many different links. If you're leaking, it could be tight muscles. Tight muscles can limit hip mobility. Tight muscles don't allow for the proper response of the pelvic floor to manage the urethra and the sphincters. It can also be the rushing to the bathroom. And especially as we are in an aging population, if somebody is feeling like they need to rush to the bathroom, and especially if they're waking multiple times a night to pee to do that, and they have not been paying attention to their core and their posture along the way, they are more likely to trip, to stumble, to fall. And many people have also avoided impact and jumping and resistance training, which build bones because of their pelvic floor. Mm-hmm. So they are now osteoporosis or osteopenia, again, higher likelihood of fracture. Does that make sense?
Yes, that makes a ton of sense. I was like, why is this? That's crazy. I was thinking it was more with balance and so forth. But
it's a bunch of different factors. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay.
It's also, we can look at, there was an interesting study that looked at walking speed. And walking speed is also something that as we are aging, you see people start to walk slower. They start to shuffle. They are afraid of falling, so they are guarded. Walking speed is correlated with higher pelvic floor dysfunction, and people with lower walking speed are typically more likely to experience dysfunction and incontinence.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that. Mm-hmm. This is so off topic, but it just made me think of, I mean, do you know who Adam Ant is? Of course you know who. My friends and I just went to see him in concert recently, and we all saw him together when we were 14 and then again when we were 56. And I was like, boy, he sure is shuffling a lot on stage. You know, he used to kick. And then we all start Googling, how old is Adam Ant? He's 70 years old. I was like, okay, he can shuffle.
Yeah.
I don't know if he has pelvic floor dysfunction or not, but
anyway. but I feel like we accept that just because we're aging, we should be shuffling. I think that if we look at this differently and say, the reason I'm shuffling is because I have stopped doing things. It's not just because I'm old. Right?
Yes.
So if we can actively age, if we can powerfully age, which the pelvic floor, in my opinion, is one of the fundamental pillars of us being able to do that, then we don't, like, I just listened to a podcast with Mark Sisson, who not everybody will know who he is. He was a very accomplished runner back in the day, winning triathlons, marathons, on the cover of Runner's World, all that kind of thing. He is now 72, I believe he is. And if he looks gray. He's got a couple wrinkles, but he is ripped and he moves with speed and grace and ease because he has kept going. He hasn't stopped. He has recognized that part of aging is nourishing your body with nourishing movement, nourishing food, nourishing activities through the day, nourishing sleep, and not stopping. Part of what I think makes us old is that we stop doing things.
Yes. We hear this on the podcast all the time. I mean, I have people on 80, 100 years old, and they're still, I had an 81-year-old the other day. She's writing like her 10th novel. I don't,
Nice.
I mean, that's the truth. You don't want to stop. And I really do think, like you were just saying, your pelvis it's the powerhouse. It's the center of the universe. There's no life without it. There's no pleasure without it. This is it. And so, it's a good one to keep young and healthy. Mm-hmm. So you talked about also, let's talk a little bit. Let's kind of get into some of it because in your program, you have us keep a bladder diary. I started keeping my bladder diary this morning, and I think I was doing something that is probably a common mistake, like preemptively peeing. Like, okay, I'm going to leave the house. Let me pee. And I drink. I'm very hydrated because I have really dry skin and I drink a ton of water and I feel like I have to pee all the time. But this morning I was like, I think you say you shouldn't be peeing more than like every 2.5 to 4 hours. And so I was like, okay, let me just do that and see how it goes. And also we're supposed to count for how long we pee, how many seconds. And I don't even know if I should admit this, but I let myself all hang out there. But so I I waited 2.5 hours, which might be a little longer than I would normally wait, and I peed for 65 seconds. Is that like that
That's
seemed
a
like
long
a
time.
really long time?
Yeah.
Is there
Yeah.
like something wrong with me, or am I overly hydrated, or
Well, there's I mean, if it was a full steady flow, that's a
yes.
really full bladder, and that's
Okay.
not typical. So, um, now I say every 2.5 to 4 hours. However, if you consume a lot of liquid,
Hmm.
then that is going, we have to accommodate for that. So it doesn't
Okay.
mean that, we have to look at how the volume of liquid that people are consuming as well. So I generally recommend 2 to 3 liters over the span of your day.
Okay.
If you are drinking more than that, you're going to urinate more frequently. If you are consuming bladder irritants, you are going to urinate more frequently. If you have trained your bladder to signal earlier, you're going to go more frequently. If you're constipated, you're going to go more frequently. So there's lots of other reasons, but just the fact of if you drink more water, then there is a point where it's too much water. So again, I kind of recommend the 2 to 3 liter zone, but we want to look at taking out bladder irritants, making sure you're not constipated, and then stopping the peeing just in case. So every time the first time we do it randomly, don't worry about it. If you're like, I'm going to go on a big road trip, or it's going to be heavy traffic, I'm going to go pee because I don't know when I'm going to get to the bathroom. If you do that once in a blue moon, don't worry about it. But
Okay.
if you do it every single time you leave the house, even if you don't have a full bladder, pretty soon the bladder is going to be aware she's getting ready to leave the house. She's going to, yep, okay. And then it's going to start stimulating you, even though it's not full. And that will then disrupt the messaging with the brain and the bladder. And the bladder will start to identify a quarter full or half full as, oh, this is urgent. We got to go. As opposed to you have a lot more left that
Yeah.
until you would actually truly be getting the signals of being full. So the bladder diary is meant to help you identify how much water are you drinking or not. Sounds like you drink adequate amounts. If you have any bladder irritants that you're consuming that could
What
potentially be contributing to
such
symptoms,
as what do you consider bladder?
caffeine, alcohol, dairy for many, gluten for some, artificial sweeteners, spicy food, acidic food, carbonated beverages. Those are the main ones.
Mhm.
Chocolate. It doesn't mean that those are all irritants for every single person, but if you are struggling with urgency or frequency and you're like, but I think I drink enough water. Usually people are not drinking enough water because they've also stopped drinking water because they're afraid of leaking or they're afraid of not making it to the bathroom in time. So it helps you highlight how much water you're drinking, what potentially could be irritants, and you then making choices. Find out if I stop that carbonated drink that I have, what changes, if anything? If I don't have caffeinated beverages in the morning or in the evening, what changes? And if something changes for the better, then you then make a choice. What's harder? Is it harder for me to give up coffee, or is it harder for me to continue having these urges and more frequent
Right.
urination periods?
Okay. Um, what can you walk us through some of the exercises? Like you say that most people are doing a Kegel wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Can you
Yeah.
can
So
you talk
a
about that?
Kegel exercise is Dr. Arnold Kegel was a physician. He saw his women generally in the postpartum population struggling with pelvic floor challenges. They weren't able to contract and relax. And so he used what's called a perineometer, which is a biofeedback device to help them see when they were contracting and relaxing to educate. So it was biofeedback to help them see this group of muscles that we can't see. Well, see the function of the muscles. And out of that came the Kegel exercise, which is basically a contract, lift, and let go of the muscles. But people have interpreted a Kegel as a squeeze.
Right.
And most people will think of squeezing their inner thighs, or they think of squeezing their butt cheeks, or they think by bearing down, it's actually activating. So it's not their fault. They've never been taught. And now we need to kind of bring the awareness. I've used the term core breath, which again, I want to honor Arnold Kegel, but I also want to expand upon his work. And the pelvic floor works in synergy with the diaphragm, which I've already I think I already highlighted, but like that sump pump action. And the pelvic floor is a part of the core. So that's where the term core breath seemed to make sense. And so that highlights that this is a core exercise. It works with the breath, and it's not just about squeezing. We add in visualization that allows people to try to understand and see on the inside of their body what's happening. So things like picking up a blueberry with your vagina and your anus, or sipping a smoothie through a straw with your vagina, could potentially be helpful for somebody to activate those muscles. So
say the thing about the blueberry again.
So if you can imagine, like if you had a blueberry at the opening of your vagina and the opening even at your anus, you could imagine using your muscles to pick that blueberry up.
Okay.
And then put it back down again.
Okay.
Okay. So there's no best cue. It's which one's best for you and which one elicits the response that we're looking for. And seeing a pelvic floor physical therapist is a great way to have them check your cues and see which one elicits the best response in your pelvic floor.
If you put a finger in your vagina and you squeeze and you can feel it, that's doing it right?
Yeah, that's your own biofeedback. So ideally you would want to feel like a gentle hug, a gentle draw up. So you're not trying to pull your finger way up into your vagina, just a gentle drawing up motion. And then can you let that go? Is there a relaxation response?
Yeah.
So that's the core breath, or that's Kegels, but kind of the further expansion is most people think of Kegels as I'm going to do them while I stand and brush my teeth. I do them at every red light in the car. I do them lying down on the floor on my back while I'm watching TV. If you're doing that correctly, great, better than nothing. However, we are dynamic beings, and a lot of the symptoms that we deal with and experience don't happen while we're standing, brushing our teeth, or sitting at a red light, or lying down on our back. They happen while we are at the gym, when we push a heavy door open, when we stand up from a chair, when we're running. And so we need to train the pelvic floor dynamically. So in the program, we first learn the core breath. We then layer that into gentle movements to start, like a pelvic tilt or a bridge. Then we get a little bit more upright in, say, a tall kneel or a seated position. Then we start to move with like a lunge or a squat. Then we can put it into a push-up or a chest press, where we exhale, knowing that the inhales are where the pelvic floor expands and lengthens. That's where it's relaxed. And when the pelvic floor contracts and lifts, that's on the exhale. So knowing that, we then take that blueberry image and we're, let's say, going to squat. We're standing upright. We inhale as we lower down into the squat. We're lengthening the pelvic floor. Then just before we stand back up, we exhale. We pick up our blueberries to activate the pelvic floor. Then we stand back up. Inhale, release, put the blueberries back down as you lower down in your squat. Exhale, pick up your blueberries, then stand up. So initially we exhale to activate the pelvic floor first, to retrain the anticipatory action of the pelvic floor. It should know what to do without us telling it, and we should be able to do things without thinking of picking up blueberries. But we remind the pelvic floor, this is the timing. You need to pre-contract before I do this movement. And then over time, we're repatterning, we're retraining, and then we do more sets and more reps. We add load, we add dynamic movement. So the pelvic floor is trained to respond to more than just standing, brushing your teeth, or sitting at a red light.
That makes sense. And I always say, if you want to know if you're doing it right, do it during sex. If you have a male partner and they make a noise, you're doing it right.
Yeah, there's another form of biofeedback.
It's right. Exactly. That is. It's biofeedback.
Yeah.
Okay. And I think I have more trouble finding my diaphragm than doing a Kegel. How do you know is that when you are like in yoga, when you do a big breath and your belly kind of expands? Where is your diaphragm exactly? I think I have
your diaphragm. If you think of your rib cage, okay, so we have our rib cage here, and the diaphragm sort of nestles underneath the lungs that are housed within the rib cage. Okay. So, and the diaphragm is in like a bit of an arched position when it's after we have exhaled. So when we inhale, ideally the ribs should expand laterally, whereas the lungs inflate, and that is as the diaphragm is flattening. And the diaphragm is what's helping pull that air into the lungs. And then and then reciprocally down below, we should have the belly expand and we should have the pelvic floor expand. Then when we exhale, the pelvic floor contracts and lifts, the belly naturally draws in, and the diaphragm goes back up into its arched position. So it's literally underneath your ribs.
Okay. That always is so hard for me to picture. And you've also said that you know, I think that we think, oh, I'm leaking urine because it's all so loose or things are loosey goosey down there. But you say sometimes it's really too tight. Is that, or do those exercises help loosen it? Or is that what you want, to loosen it up?
Well,
Like,
a lot of people think of if they're leaking or if they have prolapse, they need to tighten. I need a tight vagina and then I won't leak. Just remember the urine is coming out the urethra, not the vagina.
Exactly.
And tightness is not strength. Tight muscles restrict blood flow and circulation. They don't have a good range of motion. They can't develop as much power. So tight is weak. We want to strengthen tight muscles. We also want to lengthen tight muscles. And most people usually have a little bit of tightness in their pelvic floor. But the association is, well, if I'm leaking, how can I be too tight? That doesn't make sense. But again, tight muscles will not be able to generate the force needed to withstand the pressure that's generated from a laugh, a cough, a sneeze, a lift, a standing up from a chair. And it can't develop the power. It can't react at the right time with the right amount of force to close those openings off. So we always start, as you will see, as you get to the 28-day challenge, we always start with release exercises first. We pay attention to our posture and how things are aligned. We do some work. We use the breath because inhaling is a way of also letting go of tension. And then we also end with release work at the end of the workouts as well.
Yeah, it makes me think of Pilates, right? Like lengthening your muscles. That's what you do in Pilates. That makes a lot of sense. Okay. What else do you want to tell us about the program, or what have I missed?
I guess as you've noticed, people come in thinking they're going to do an exercise program, and you will see exercise, but it's really a lifestyle program because the two main things, hydration and constipation, always need to be addressed first. If you are dehydrated, if you are not consuming enough water, and if you are not pooping well every single day, like pooping like a champ, then I could give you all the exercise in the world and you wouldn't really notice much change. So working on hydration, getting up to 2 to 3 liters of water, removing bladder irritants. And then that's another thing that's going to help you poop better is if you're drinking enough water, but also making sure that you're pooping well and you're not constipated. Working on the gut health component will sometimes that's all that people need. I shouldn't say that people still benefit and need the exercise, but that will alleviate so many symptoms in people. So I want people to understand that there's much more to optimizing pelvic health than just a few magic exercises. And this is a lifestyle, like brushing our teeth. We will do this for the rest of our life, but I don't want people to think, oh my God, now I have another thing I need to do on my to-do list. This is meant to be incorporated to be your workout for the day. That will also be addressing your bones. That will also be addressing your heart. That will also be addressing your brain health, your mobility, flexibility. So this is a longevity program, really.
Yeah. Okay. I'm glad you said that because I did have that thought because, I have all these guests on and I'm always trying to incorporate everything. And now I have to do my fascia flow and now I have to do my vagina and now I have to, so and people who listen to this podcast all the time, I think are pretty well versed in, we talk about fiber a lot. We talk about gut health a lot. I know you don't know anything about me, but I reversed my heart disease by following a whole food plant-based diet. And so that I'm always preaching about the fiber and the whole foods and the plant foods. And So, I mean, yeah, the constipation is like something nobody wants. And you do have this great part about pooping like a champ where, you show us how to sit proud on the toilet. I love that
Hmm.
because
Hmm.
I've been known to get in the toilet and just like, ugh,
Yeah.
just let it all go and slash. Okay, I'm going to relax for a second. Um, but you also talk about what your poop should look like. And I thought this was very smart. You give us the Bristol stool chart.
Hmm.
And so you can look at the Bristol stool chart. I'll try to remember to put that in the show notes.
Yeah.
And you
You
want to
can
have,
Google it and you'll
yeah,
find
you
it.
can
And yeah.
Google it. And you want to have the number 4 looking poop on the Bristol stool
Yeah.
chart, which
Yeah.
is, I'm a
Yeah.
champ. I'll
Yeah.
just say
And
that.
it's
Yeah.
another, because, some people, I think most people probably glimpse into the toilet, but we should be
Oh,
looking at our
yeah. No,
poop.
yeah. I
We
think
should be
everybody
looking at,
looks, don't they?
yeah.
I
Hopefully they
mean,
do. We should be looking at our poop. It tells us a lot.
yes.
And if you are straining to poop, that's a problem. It's a problem for your pelvic floor. It's going to create more urgency and frequency with regards to your bladder. It's also meaning you're literally not getting the shit out. You're not getting the toxins out.
Yeah.
When we're thinking about the hormone piece, the hormonal disruption, we would be starting to recycle our hormones. That's going to create some of the upheaval that we experience as well. So it's super important to know what your poop is telling you, and a Bristol stool chart is a good place to start.
Yeah. Oh my God. I never thought about like recycling your hormones and all that if you don't get your shit out.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, that's
Mm-hmm.
good. Okay. I'm glad we're covering all the bases. um, this is off topic, but I think just from getting to know your program, and I told you, you are in my Instagram feed 5,000 times a day. You do such a good job. I don't know. It's because if I'm 56, or I don't know if I said something about peeing or
Targeted
what.
marketing.
Yes. And I'm like, so I just, I started watching your videos and I'm like, okay, you're a brilliant businesswoman. And I love everything about how you've named your business, to your videos, to your program, to your follow ups, just everything. And I think that there's a lot of women who listen to this podcast who do some kind of cottage industry business. Could you give us some like a couple business tips?
Oh, sure. Well, I mean, this has taken me 20 years to get to the point where I feel like I finally developed my flow.
Okay.
There was another business in there anyway, there's been
Yes.
lots of iterations.
Yes, yes.
Um,
I get that.
yeah. I now have, fortunately, I have somebody to help me with my marketing. So getting people to help you in your business where it's not your zone of genius is really, really important. And the sooner you can do that, the sooner. I try to do everything with an entrepreneur lifestyle mindset. You're forced initially to do everything by yourself. And as soon as you can outsource, especially marketing, do that. That would be the place that I would start. Because ultimately helping somebody, you could have the best program in the world. You need people to know about your program. And so somebody who understands how to get it into people's Facebook feeds and Instagram feeds is not what I know how to do. And so that would be the first thing that I would I would have help for in the business. My first person was an accountant, which I was happy to get rid of the bookkeeping and all that kind of stuff as well. But again, if I were to do it all again, I would try to find that marketing person right from the get-go. That's going to make the biggest difference. The other is just, my names for my business have kind of come by just talking and making jokes. That's my delivery method. I like to have a little bit of fun. It's a heavy topic. And so me just going through presentations and talking in front of people is where, like I said, I came up on stage and I said, as a joke, Vagina Coach. There you go. There's my light bulb moment. And Buff Muff, I was joking. I said I was talking about I used to call it the Kegel Mojo program. And I said, okay, who was ready to buff your muff? And everybody was like, oh my God, I love Buff. And then I was like, I think I better change it to Buff Muff. So
yeah,
I don't know. It just kind of evolves, but be open and be curious and be okay with changing. Even if I've had systems in place that I had just invested thousands of dollars for, and 2 months later, somebody gave me a better thing. And the thought of changing was like, oh my God. But if something literally is better and going to change your life, then be open to that. Don't get stuck in your ways.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Even this is so stupid, but I don't know why I wasn't doing this. But you and I are going back and forth about dates, and you're like, here, and you just sent me your
Calendly.
Calendly,
Yeah.
whatever it's called. And I was like, okay, why am I so stupid? And so now I'm using that. I'm
Yeah.
like, that's duh. Why
Yeah.
why am I going back and forth like this? Just
Sidebar for
little
that story. I just saw a quick little, I follow, I think it's called Time Investors or something. It's a sharing stories of entrepreneurs. And the fellow who started Calendly, if I'm getting this correct, his father was, he witnessed his father being murdered. He moved to the United States. He has a terrible, horrible story past, came from nothing and had many failed attempts along the way as well. And ended up starting Calendly and is now like $1 billion business. So that's another important point is I love the acronym FAIL, first attempt in learning. Nothing that you're doing, it could at the moment feel like a failure, but it is teaching you something. So figure out what it's teaching you. And now what's your course correct going to be? I've had many of those moments where you feel like you have failed along the way, and they've all ended up creating this zigzag, not linear path to where I am now. So stay curious, keep trying, keep testing, be open, talk with other people who are doing, like, look at the people who are doing what you want to do and emulate them.
Mm, that's really good advice. I like that. And I know a lot of the women are doing their own businesses. And so I think that that's so, it is important. It's like, what is Brene Brown? I always think about her when she's talking about first fucking time. Like
Yeah.
have you ever heard her say
Yeah.
that? And I think it was for my first podcast, I pinned that at the top of my, like by my camera,
Yeah.
and it just said first fucking time up there, like and it went great. And so,
Yeah.
that's just how you guys you have
Yeah.
to, like she also says, throw your hat in the ring,
Yeah.
just keep going. I like
Yeah. I
what you're
remember
saying
somebody
about
saying
that.
that it's the first pancake. Whenever you're making pancakes, the first one never turns out well.
Yes.
Never. So everything that you're trying for the first time is like your first pancake, but eventually you get to really perfect pancakes.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. Yeah, that's good. Well, it seems like your pancakes are going pretty good now. Um, I love that. I love it for you. And more than that, I love that you're helping women, and it's such an important thing, because if you're having painful sex, or if you're having, you know, leaking bladder or things like that, I mean, you can't feel confident. It's hard,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
so it's really important work you're doing. Do you have
Thank you.
any advice about that, about painful sex, or is that a
Vaginal
complete, it's all,
estrogen,
oh, vaginal
vaginal
estrogen?
estrogen, see your pelvic floor physical therapist to understand, like, why is it painful? Is it low estrogen? Is it
Mhm.
tight muscles? Is it an organ out of place? Is it fear, trauma? So you have to understand what your why is. And then, but I would say pretty much everybody beyond the age of menopause would benefit from vaginal estrogen.
Yeah, we heard that from I had a OBGYN on not too long ago, and she was talking about that.
Yeah.
Okay, well,
Yeah.
that's good to hear it from multiple sources. I like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um well, do you mind if I asked you just a couple of fun questions?
Sure.
Okay. What's your best piece of advice for aging well?
Keep moving.
Oh, I like that. It's good. Do you have a best piece of advice that you've ever received, that anyone's ever given you, not age related?
I had a business piece of advice where you're making decisions, and I would say this could be health related. It could be used in many terms. Is this new thing going to contribute to or contaminate your freedom? So you can make choices about what you're putting in your body. Is this going to contribute to or contaminate your health? You could make choices about who you're hanging out with. Is this going to contribute to or contaminate your well-being in your business? Is this system or person or product that I want to create going to contribute or to or contaminate my freedom?
Mm, that's interesting. I like that. That's very good advice. Um, do you have any lessons that you've learned from watching your parents age?
Oh boy. Well, that's very much top of mind right now. My mom has always been very active and is a very young 80-year-old. My father has chosen a different path over the last few years and is a very old 80-year-old. And that is now requiring a move to a senior center where my mom really does not need to be there, but but she can't be the caregiver to my father in their home. So keep moving, stay active, eat well, love well, participate in, stay social, do all the things. A sedentary lifestyle you will be aging very, very quickly. That will definitely contaminate your freedom.
That's so sad. It's really hard. It's
Yeah.
hard with
Yeah, it
your
is.
parents. Do you have a favorite? Well, we didn't talk about this. Do you have a favorite health or beauty product? I know you talked about a pessary in your. I don't know if that's your favorite health or beauty product, but do you? Can you quickly tell us what that is, and then tell us if that's not your favorite health or beauty product?
It's not my favorite. I would say pessaries are like orthotics for your pelvic floor, and they can be life changing, especially from a prolapse management perspective. There are over the counter options. There's also things you can get through your urogynecologist through a prescription. There are also companies innovating in that space and doing 3D printed versions. And I have a couple of podcast episodes on my
Okay.
on
Between
my
two
podcast
lips.
about pessaries.
And we're saying
So
Pessary, pessary,
a
just
pessary,
so
correct?
people can understand that.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. My favorite device is red light therapy, and I use red light therapy for my hair, for my skin, for my whole body, but also I have a vaginal red light therapy device as well. So I'm a
What?
huge
I
red
use
light
it on my
therapy fan.
face, but I didn't know you could do that on your vag.
Yeah, yeah. There's two products. There's one by Joylux and there's one by Fringe, Fringe. And I've used both. They the Joylux device. I was the Canadian importer distributor for a number of years for them, or the first Canadian distributor for them many years ago when I had an e-commerce store. So I've been using that product for a long time. The Fringe one is newer to the market. It's a little bit lighter. It's a little bit smaller. So certain people can accommodate that one a bit better. But I like both. So red light therapy is great for so many things, reducing inflammation specific to the vagina. It can help with collagen production, lubrication, can help heal tissues. I used it. I had a rectocele repair surgery 4 years ago. I used it externally. So I was shining red light on my vulva. Post rectocele surgery, you're not putting anything inside right away. But yeah, I'm a huge fan of red light.
Oh, that's good to know. I love that. Okay.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And then again, off topic, you can tell I like to do that. What's your favorite concert you've ever been to?
I have been to two concerts in my whole life. I'm not a concert goer. So, of the two that I went to, it would be Depeche Mode back in the 80s.
Okay, that's one of my favorites.
Yeah.
Oh my god, that's a lot. I love it. I I go to so many concerts and I love music so much that I always just like to know what people's favorite concerts are. But um, you're you're the second person from Canada who's told me that you've only been to one or two concerts. Is that not as much of a thing there, or is that
No,
just
it's a thing. I
coincidence?
just am, I don't know. I don't love, I like, if I was at a bar and there was a live band, doesn't even have to be anybody famous. I really like that. But
Yeah,
being in a big, I just don't like, that's not my thing. I don't like big
yeah.
crowds of people. I don't like, I don't know. It's just not a thing. No.
I get that. I live in Austin, Texas, and so I think I'm lucky. We have a lot of. You could go into any bar and hear
Yeah.
live music all the time. Um, but we also have this great venue. I call it the old lady venue jokingly because, we get a lot of bands that are smaller now. Like I just saw Violent Femmes the other night,
Oh, no
but
way. I used
this
to love them.
arena, it's not even an arena. Like you can park 2 blocks away, so that's easy.
Yeah.
And then you can sit down. I didn't sit at the Violent Femmes, but you can sit, and every seat is a great seat. It only holds, I don't know, 1,000. I don't know. It's very
Yeah, I
small.
could get on board
It's
with that.
very intimate. But I think that one reason we go to so many concerts is because of that venue. It's just
Yeah, I
so
could get behind that.
idealized.
Yeah.
So anyway, well, I've loved talking to you, Kim. I can't thank you enough for being such a good and open guest and sharing wholeheartedly. And I'll try and put all this good stuff in the show notes.
Yeah. Well,
And
thanks for having me. I appreciate the work that other podcasters are doing to help spread the word too. So thank you so much.
thank you. Take care.
You too. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening, friend. From my heart to yours, be well until we meet again.